Okay, so today's question is, are classrooms joyful places, and do they need to be? That's kind of a big question, right? Because if they don't need to be joyful, then the first question doesn't really matter. But maybe they do need to be. Obviously, my premise is that yes, they need to be joyful places. That's my hypothesis. They definitely need to be, in addition to being creative, energized, challenging, safe spaces. In all of this, and in addition to this, my hypothesis is that classrooms absolutely need to be joyful. Joyful. And here's why. Here's where this is coming from. So lately, my two classes, certainly my morning class, but both my classes this year are just these wonderful spaces. We're having such a great time. There is a strong sense of community. We have a strong sense already of community. Okay. There is lots of student voice. There's lots of student voice. There's lots of co-teaching. I've already had several students go up to the front of the class and lead conversations. They are leading discussions. They are leading activities. They are actually conducting lessons. There's lots of discussion. There's meaningful and thoughtful discussion. Okay, there's laughter. There's a lot of laughter going on in this class. I have to say, there's laughter. And that started really from day one. From day one, when we played our first activity, which we called, what did we call it? The Broken Telephone Remix, which is where people sit in chairs. They sit in front of each other, right? And you draw on the person's back, right? So you draw on the person in front of you. You draw on their back, and then they draw on the person back. So they're sitting, in a row, and right from day one. And these people they just met. And so right from that initial activity, there was lots of laughter. Okay, we were laughing, and it was fun. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. So already they're telling me that this is their favorite class. There's a lot of this is my favorite class. This is my favorite class. And last week there was this, wonderful affirmation from a student who said, I'm learning so much. I'm learning so much in this class, which really is what's important to me. This is super important to me. Obviously, the fun, hugely important. The laughter is important. This all has to lead, in my mind, however, to this. Okay? This has to lead to this. Are they learning? And so I was reaffirmed last week when a student says, absolutely, this is where I'm learning the most in this class because of all this, because of this. I think because of this, there's lots of this, and because there's this. Okay, so we're feeling safe. We're feeling safe. We're feeling like a community. There's lots of student voice. And there's a lot of fun and laughter. So yes, I think that joyfulness is hugely important in classrooms. So from this perspective, I am going to schools, I'm sitting around, I'm looking around, and I'm wondering if this is the norm. If this is the norm, if students are feeling that their classrooms are joyful. And my suspicion is that they are not. They do not feel this joy in their classes. So what's missing? What's going on? I think that there's still, unfortunately, a lot of silence. Right? Students are still expected to be silent a lot. And that there is a lot of teacher talk. Okay? There's a lot of this. There's a lot of teacher talk going on in the classroom, is what I'm suspecting. I'm suspecting that that there's a lot of, that things are still very, very controlled and orchestrated. And by that, I guess I mean that there isn't a lot of freedom. There's not a lot of freedom. From the very simple things, like kids aren't free to, gosh, from the big to the small. So the big thing, they can't choose what they're learning. They can't choose what or how they want to learn. Right? They don't get to choose that. They don't get to choose where they want to learn. Right? They got to just sit there in their desks. Don't move. Don't get up. Don't walk around. There's no freedom of movement. Movement, not a lot of freedom of movement there. There's certainly not a lot of freedom of who they want to work with, maybe. Who they want to work with. To learn with. And maybe not enough freedom of ideas. Right? So there's a lot of control. There's still a lot of control. There's this whole piece is big. We still control a lot of what goes on in classrooms. And so as a result, there's not a lot of choice. Not a lot of choice. And it's very much business-like, you know? It's business-like. This is what we got to learn. This is what we got to learn. Learn this. Learn this. Plus, learn it this way. Learn it this way. Right? Which equals regurgitate. I don't know how to spell regurgitate. Regurgitate. Right? So, and the best part of all this, that it starts virtually. It starts virtually immediately. Okay? Say for kindergarten, my child is in SK right now, and it is still play-based. But my other child, starting from last year, grade one. Okay, we start them early. Okay? It starts early in the learning process, in the schooling process. I'm not even going to say learning because it's a schooling process, and they are not the same. Right? This is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that schooling process currently in our current model, in our current mainstream model, does not equal learning process for everyone. It might for some. See, for some it does. Sure. For some it does. For some. Who are those some? Those some are those like me. like me, I excelled. I excelled, right? I excelled at the game of school. I excelled at school. Why? I had supportive parents. I came from a family that supported education. I came from a family that that was fairly mainstream, I suppose, whatever that means. I had two parents. It was fairly functional, right? We were upper middle class. Okay, so money was not an issue. It was very, very boring, very normal, whatever that means. Very normal, quote unquote. Okay, so school worked for me. I was really good at jumping through hoops. Really good. Right? So for students who come from this background and are okay with jumping through hoops, jumped through hoops. And maybe that's the other thing. I came from a culture that my family culture was about performance. We were very much about doing things that made our parents happy. That was very important to us. So that kind of worked, perhaps, with the schooling process. So yes, I learned in school. I didn't learn as much as I thought I did. I mean, in terms of when I got to university. Then university was where I discovered, what did I discover? That I was not a critical thinker. Not a critical thinker. This is something that comes up a lot in conversation lately. I was really good at telling people what I thought they wanted to hear, right? But I couldn't have my own thought. That took a long time to figure out how to do that. So I wish I'd come out of university more of a critical thinker, for sure. I was not good at that. So going back to this idea of that this current mainstream model, right, is the schooling process, but that it's not necessarily a learning process. And I think I'm going to add that I was a girl, that I'm a girl. And so this whole jumping through hoops thing is very gender specific. I'm going to say that. I'm going to say this is very gender specific, right? So sure, I'm a pleaser. I was definitely a pleaser. Okay? Love to be a pleaser. So that's why school worked for me, perhaps. I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to have to think about that a little bit more. But this is what I'm noticing, that it can be so much more. Here's also what I kind of understand about my experience, was that school was a joyful place for me. Maybe because I fit in, right? So because I fit in and I could do all this, school was a joyful place for me. So if I look at elementary, when I think back on my elementary experience, I loved school. Loved it. And here's why. My recollection of it is that it was a very, very joyful place. It was where I could be creative. It was where I excelled. It was where I certainly had friends. There was lots of play. I remember the play. I remember so much of the play. I had fun teachers. My teachers were super fun. They were youthful. And I remember playing with them too. There was playing. Sports, there was sports. It was a small school. It was certainly a very small school. We were a small group of students. And by small, like maybe 100 kids in the whole school. It was really small. We had a strong community. I don't know. It was just a really wonderful place. We had a lot of fun. And then In high school, I actually remember it being very joyful as well. High school was great. High school was also a very fun place, and I do remember my teachers being incredibly funny people. They were funny. They were they challenged us. They challenged me. What else can I say about that? It was, I guess it was your typical high school. It wasn't anything particularly special about it, although there was a lot of school spirit. That I want to say was true. There was a lot of school spirit. You know, we felt it. We felt that we were part of a really special school, a special school community. You know, we had pep rallies. We had pep rallies. We had strong teams. There was lots going on in the arts. You know, it was vibrant. It was a very vibrant place. And I loved all that. I fed into that. That was amazing. That was a really great place for me to be. You know, there was lots going on. And of course, knowing what I know now, the vibrancy very much came from the teaching staff. You know, the teaching staff made a lot of stuff happen for us. Right? There was a lot going on. And so the whole place was actually a very joyful place. Not just the classrooms, but the entire school, for me anyway. Probably, you know, going back to this whole thing, because I kind of fit in. I fit in. So I thought that, sure, school was a great place. It was a very joyful place for me. So here's the question, I guess. How do we maybe the other question then is that, okay, yes, school needs to be a joyful place, but how do we ensure that it is joyful for everyone? Because we know that school is not a happy place for everyone, right? Was I talking about a lot of this? How do we make sure that it is joyful for everyone? So maybe that's the other question. The other question now needs to be how, so now the questions are, is it joyful? Is it joyful? And this needs to be the classroom, the whole school. And, okay, so I guess we've already answered, does it need to be? Perhaps. Have we already answered that? And is it joyful for everyone? You know, that's the big piece. How do we make sure that it is a joyful place for everyone? And not just for the few, and not for some or few. Right? How do we ensure that everyone's having a good time? That everyone is feeling like they belong, that they are safe, that they have a voice, that there's a place for them, that they contribute. And I think a lot of this, I don't know yet necessarily. I do think that in the context of the classroom, I think we need to let go. And by we, I mean the teachers. We need to let go. I think a lot of what school is today, a lot of what school has always been, a lot of school is about the teacher. A lot of schooling is about teaching, when it needs to be about learning. Right? I think it needs to be a lot less about teacher talk. And it needs to be more student talk and teacher listening. You know, I think that that's a big one. I think we need to really re-examine. I think there needs to be a re-examination. We need to re-examine power dynamics in the classroom. You know, I think we need to start looking at different kinds of power sharing with students. I think we need to, you know, better understand authority positions. You know, I think we need to negotiate with students. What kind of partnerships we can have with them. You know, this is a big piece, the authority piece. And yes, we are still the authorities in the classroom. And yes, in order to create safe spaces, we need to make sure that our students are safe. But it's not about us. Like, I think the authority piece is about us. You know, we have to break down the us versus them model. You know, we got to stop that. It cannot be that anymore. It has to be all of us. Like, this is a big one. This is going to take some time to talk. We got to really talk about this one and work through this, because I think that, you know, any kind of adversarial model is not healthy. Adversarial, is that how we spell that one? Adversarial models does not equal learning, right? So we have to really renegotiate this, really think about how this is working, you know, and I think that a lot of schools is still this. I think the second a student steps out of line and a student does not fit the mold, a student doesn't fit into any of these characteristics, that student is automatically put in a position of, you know, conflict with authority figures. And that's problematic, because you can't learn. Okay? You can't learn if there is this us versus them kind of setup. So we got to figure that one out. This one, we got to really figure this one out. We have to really start renegotiating what this means when we share power with our students. So I think that's it for today. I think that might be something to start with. And let me know what you think. Let me know what I'm missing. Let me know what we need to talk about some more, and how to figure out some of these questions, and what these questions can lead to more questions. And how do we do this? How do we do this? How do we let go of some of the power and authority, so that we don't set up an adversarial situation with us versus our students, but that we are all working together, and that we're collaborating and we're creating community so that students can learn. All right, I'll leave you with that for now. Thanks.